focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And good evening. Welcome on this Tuesday evening, July 15th, 2025. We're going to have Mark Mitchell on of Rasmussen, the lead pollster. What is the polling telling us, folks? Look, don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. I'm just reporting the news here, folks. I want President Trump to succeed. I've met the man. I've been in the room with him for a very small group of us for an interview, as you guys know, at Mar-a-Lago. I personally like him. On a personal level, I like him. I like a lot of his policies. I want him to succeed. And I told you guys straight out, there are going to be days we agree with him and days we don't. That's just the nature of politics, right? And I think most of you get that, right? So I want him to succeed. But to be successful, he obviously has to have a coalition, a movement behind him, right? He has to have the MAGA movement and coalition stay intact. So, how's he doing? Well, Mark Mitchell has a lot of new numbers. And so we're getting an exclusive interview here early on from these brand new numbers by Mark Mitchell tonight. You're going to want to hear about this. Are we also headed toward the breakdown of the U.S.? If we cannot correct the deep state and the problems of our country and the tyranny of the federal government, what comes next? Are we in a fourth turning? Does that fourth turning show some kind of change in America? Are certain states going to break away? I don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions, but I want to ask Mark about it because Mark has been researching and thinking about these things and polling on these things. So Mark Mitchell will be with us tonight. And then I want to bring to you my full 1 hour of radio today. I don't do this very often. But today's radio show was so important. Did you know that there was a convention held recently in Denver, Colorado? Okay, Denver, Colorado. Let me show you the screenshot, the website. There it is, Psychedelic Science 2025. Psychedelic Science 2025. And you know who some of the speakers included? Well, according to the screenshots we have and the websites we've been to, some of the speakers included, well, the governor of Colorado, former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, according to the website. We'll show you the screenshot tonight. This is very troubling. I called Carl on Sunday to say, hey, Carl, I haven't heard from you in a while. What's up? He started telling me what he'd just gotten back from 8,000 people. This is about a new push for a new type of religion where people have altered states of consciousness and meet entities that are really demons. Look, I've been warning about this in my book since 1990. This, to me, is one of the biggest stories of the last 12 months. I'll explain why tonight. I won't explain it twice. I will explain it here and then again as I do in today's radio show / TV show, which I want to bring to you tonight, because it's so important that if you already saw it, you should see it again. But I'll tell you right now, everyone should see this. If you want to understand the times, the men of Issachar were called wise because they understood the times and knew what God wanted them to do. Most people see the world in bits and pieces, as Francis Schaeffer said, not as a big puzzle. In bits and pieces, not as the big picture. Well, folks, I want you to understand the times. I want you to know how to respond. I received an email today from a lady whose nephew is getting into this. And she said, look, I'm praying for you to make the right decision because I'm concerned about hallucinations, altered states of consciousness, and what you could encounter. She sent me the young man, her nephew's response. He said he'd been praying on it. He's very aware that people can encounter entities. But he's been praying on it, and he's willing to do some of these things because he's trying to, I guess, get off vaping or whatever else, chewing tobacco, whatever else it was. And that these were things God had created. This is so dangerous, folks. And this is what I've been writing about and speaking about since my first book in 1990. And if you want to really understand where we're going and have answers for people, but also understand the spiritual deception and the level of spiritual deception that's growing and only going to increase, where people are literally encountering demons, whether they call them spirit guides, master guides, think they're individuals more highly evolved through the process of reincarnation. This to me is one of the most important TV shows I've done in the last 12 months, because it is showing us where we're going with the church, quote church. Because there were a lot of groups there that are representing religion. This is a new religious system. There's a lot of psychiatrists that were there, psychiatry. And this is going to help you understand so much for what I think we actually see playing out in the last days, even in the book of Revelation. There's a strong delusion, an increase in demonism, occultism. So I hope you will tweet, text, email, Getter, Truth Social, tell everyone you know to come right here, right now, worldviewtube.com, and tune in. You did hear what Mark Mitchell's telling us, so we can encourage President Trump to get back on course quickly for the success of his administration and our country. You need to hear what he's going to say, but then you need to hear this hour with Carl Tykrib, one of the leading experts on transhumanism and technocracy. Very important broadcast tonight. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you guys about our national conference coming up right outside of Memphis, Tennessee, in this very nice middle upper scale community called Collierville, Tennessee. Look at this amazing lineup. Well, Mark Mitchell himself will be with us. What do you know? Gordon Chang, Sidney Powell, Dr. Lana Hedia, Dr. Andy Woods, Chris Martinson, Alex Newman, myself. It's a 22nd annual, I was going to say Ozarks Worldview Weekend, but we moved it out of the Ozarks, brought it here to Memphis. The 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend. We only have 350 seats. I saw some people registering yesterday. Beautiful auditorium owned by our city, our town here. Our town, Collierville, owns it. And they're renting it to us. It's beautiful. And we have all the hotels listed. All the hotels are listed. Where to stay in beautiful Collierville, Tennessee. Come join us. And because we only have seating for 350, guess what? It's going to give you plenty of time to walk up and visit with the speakers. So I hope you'll join us for this Friday night, all day Saturday. Now, don't forget, there's also the Thursday night banquet. Okay, the Thursday night banquet, I'll have my grand piano and my piano player. We'll do a few numbers. And then we're going to have a keynote presentation by Hedia. You don't want to miss out. This is a beautiful ballroom attached to a restaurant we love. Love this restaurant. The meal, the food is amazing. Okay, so join us for that Thursday night Worldview Weekend Foundation banquet on that Thursday night. All the details are there at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. And then quickly go over it, if you would, to worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Don't forget about our great sponsors. Worldview Talk for satellite phones, solar generators, Bella Grace, I take it each and every day with collagen, cat's claw, astaxanthin that takes from the free radicals, Swish for Life, that's loaded with glutathione to detox your cells, the Worldview Healthcare, that's so you can have your own pharmacy at home, your own urgent care. Keep those vital meds on hand. Melissa House GPA, that's Gatatana. I take it every day. I give a half a scoop on her food every morning to Dolly. Remember our buddy? Let me show you that. Well, hold on, Logan. Let me bring that up here. Let me bring it up. Here it is. Here it is. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. Remember Tom Harper raising this phytoplankton for his starfish and whatnot? Yeah. And he had a sea farm, a unique sea farm. And he was given a terminal diagnosis. He thought, what do I got to lose? And he started eating the phytoplankton. Had biopsies on his lungs. 11 biopsies that all came back benign. The terminal diagnosis went on So you're benign. He lived another 10 years, retired to Hawaii, we're told. You'll find his story online, him telling it, his daughter telling it. I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you his story. You want to know why I take it every day? It also feeds at the cellular level, your mitochondria. See, boost your immune system so your immune system can fight off disease. Have a healthy immune system, right? So I hope you'll check it out there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Don't forget about our home and health channel. We have a 24/7 home and health channel running 24/7. Do you know that we launched 2 new channels yesterday? worldviewtube.com/history. We now have a 24/7 history channel. We have a lot of history programs we've developed over the years and more coming. worldviewtube.com/history. And guess what else we launched yesterday? worldviewtube.com/prophecy. worldviewtube.com/prophecy. It's a Bible prophecy channel. What's that, Logan?
They're also in the sponsors list.
They're also in the sponsors list as you scroll down. Oh, look at that. I'm seeing those for the first time. Look at that. worldviewtube.com/prophecy, worldviewtube.com/history, worldviewtube.com/health. Right, Logan? Is that health?
Yeah.
They're all there in our sponsorship. And these are free. These are free. Okay? Again, look at all we can do together, folks. Of course, Worldview Water. We had to order more of those water purifiers today. This is the water I drink. This is the water I shower in with these filter. I have a filter in my shower, and this is the water I feed or give Dolly to drink, and all my fur babies, Lily and Pearl, taking out all those horrible chemicals for you. So again, I hope you'll check it out. worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Joining me now is Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports. He's the top pollster there. By the way, he'll be a keynote speaker at our upcoming Fall Worldview Weekend, our 22nd annual national conference in the Mid-South. Full details at worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. We only have 350 seats, folks, in the beautiful theater in Collierville, Tennessee. Full details and to register at worldviewstore.com. I think President Trump's poll numbers are going the wrong direction. Hopefully he can pull this out. But if not, are we headed to a fourth turning? Is this one of the last stops, as people say? Well, we tried reform. We tried to stop the federal government and tyranny, the deep state, and the MAGA movement didn't work. And now what is the option? Is it secession for states? Is that even possible now? Joining me to discuss all this is Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen. Mark, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. Yeah, it's okay. Carolyn Levitt does the same thing. She calls me Matt Rasmussen, so it's totally fine.
Okay, good. All right. So tell me, what is going on with President Trump's poll numbers today? Today being, of course, July 15th, 2025.
Yeah, I just want everybody to know I'm not rooting for any particular team here except for the voters. And so people might get upset with the stuff I'm going to say, but the Trump administration needs to be called out right now because it's failing really hard. And what we have is that Donald Trump's approval rating has basically imploded in the last 3 weeks. And he just signed his signature legislation, the biggest bill of his second term, just a week and a half ago. His numbers should be soaring right now. They were Trump net +8 3.5 weeks ago. It's -4 right now. And the worst he's done this cycle was -5. So he's 1 point away from where his approval rating was when the market imploded 15%. Now, is it super horrible? Could it recover? That's possible, but the problem is that doesn't necessarily mean that the Republicans are going to go sailing to some pickup in the fall of 26 in the House and the Senate, right? That's the problem, is that right now, even though his numbers aren't horrible, might recover, that Trump appears to be losing a lot of political capital, especially with his base here, that might go on to drain support for the Republicans and cause the Democrats to pick up the House and the Senate.
So, oh boy, you said the House and the Senate. Up to now, we've been talking just the House. You just added the pickup of the Senate by Democrats. That means impeachment and possibly more likely conviction and removal, and Vice President J.D. Vance becomes president. Is that Is that even a possibility based on what you just said?
Well, I think the bar is pretty high for conviction, but again, here's the problem is that Republicans don't like Trump. And so we haven't really seen what Trump in a completely weakened scenario looks like. What happens if the Democrats could continue to pound on this Epstein stuff and produce like fake committees like they did with the Jan 6 committee and turn this into a massive new Russian collusion hoax? This could turn into Donald Trump's essentially Afghanistan. And is it a big deal? No, it is, but it's an unforced error. They could correct this right now if they came out and acknowledged the fact that voters hate one of the biggest signals we've ever had in polling, two-tiered justice. And you have all these influencers saying nothing to see here. Ben Shapiro, no, nobody cares about this. They care about two-tiered justice. And what America was just informed about is that people who they believe are essentially being predators, abusing children that are rich and wealthy are going to skate. That's new and that's different. And so don't refer to polls from 5 or 6 months ago because people thought Trump was going to come in and fix this. And if he's not going to fix this, what about pharma accountability? What about firing all of these people that are embedded and corrupting the IRS, all these other agencies, right? What about holding the FBI accountable for the violent raid of Mar-a-Lago? What about the idea that like basically people think that Joe Biden was taking money from our foreign adversaries? Like, across the board, like the pardon, are we going to see accountability on the auto pen thing? Probably not. If the Epstein stuff, like we should have more evidence on Epstein than anything else because there's thousands of hours of video that apparently nobody's looked at, and our own Federal Bureau of No Investigation refuses to open an investigation. And instead, what we see is gaslighting and fake logic that America got really good at sniffing BS. And when you come out and say, oh, well, we can't produce Jeffrey Epstein's perfect list, therefore we can do nothing, that's not how law enforcement works. People will see through that, and the polling numbers we have out.
And we just got today we got some audio by President Trump on this, on the White House lawn, the South Lawn. Watch and listen to this, my friends. Here we go.
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden information. We went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it. But she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you make of this thing now that this is made up by the Democrats? But whatever's credible, Pam Bondi should release.
It sounds like moving goalposts and artificial. He said the standard there is release. I don't think Americans really want to actually see videos of this stuff happening to kids. I think they just want to see people who the government thinks are persons of interest investigated and indicted. And so is that too hard to ask? We spend $11 billion a year on the FBI that, in my opinion, produces very little because it certainly hasn't produced anything about Butler. It hasn't produced anything about things people care about other than unless you were in a certain radius of the Capitol Hill on January 6th. And so until it's been proven that the FBI's priorities are in the interest of the voters, I'm just going to assume that they should do an investigation. Let me just read some numbers, and you tell me if you think that these numbers warrant an investigation by the people. So for the people, 57% are following this closely, sure. 47% say Epstein was murdered. Only 31% say he committed suicide. Only 33% of Republicans. And this is after Dan Bongino came out and said that, or Kash Patel said that he saw the videos, right? The FBI and the Federal Department of Justice have recently concluded an investigation which found that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide and that Epstein did not keep a client list. Do you believe the FBI and the Department of Justice are telling the truth? Only 21% say yes, 56% say no, 52% of Republicans don't even believe their own administration, 27%, only 27% of Republicans say yes, only 15% of independents, 55% say no. And which is closer to your opinion? The Epstein case is now closed, a la what Pam Bondi told everybody, or there are dozens of powerful and wealthy offenders who need to face justice. 16% say case closed. 68% say face justice. I can tell you that this is a much bigger signal than any of the stuff on the border. And so two-tiered justice is the problem here, and this was a blow to the idea that Americans are going to get redress for that. Only 20% of Republicans think that the Epstein case is now closed. It's not going to go away. This is going to hang like an albatross around Donald Trump's neck until it is righted, and I think it can be righted with just a simple statement from the FBI.
Well, that's the good news.
Come out and announce an investigation. They did it for Brennan. They're going to do an investigation. You can't just listen. Trust in the FBI was destroyed. We had a majority of people thinking it was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. And so people think the FBI is corruptible, a lot of them, right? And so when you get in charge, just because Donald Trump's the head of the administration, people know about the deep state. Just because Ratcliffe's at the head of the CIA, just because Kash Patel is at the head of the FBI, doesn't mean people are going to implicitly trust everything that comes out of them. And so, unfortunately, the standard of evidence is higher. Transparency doesn't mean just telling everybody there's nothing to see here on Fox News. It means providing substance. Right. That's how you restore trust. So, in my call to the Trump administration is provide substance to satiate the fears and anger of the American people who think that their elitist betters are just running rampant and doing whatever they want.
So are we in the fourth turning now? And what does that mean to the audience? And does the fourth turning involve secession by some states, or what people are calling civil war, or what? What do you see? What does this polling tell you?
I mean, it's like the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. It's hard to predict what the fourth turning is, but we've talked about it on your show. It's the idea that our society goes through cycles where order is high and the need for order is high. Like, for instance, after World War II, society came together. A lot of people died, but it was a great period with high institutional trust, a lot of shared values. Society was very homogenous, I guess is probably the right word to say. And then there was a period after all of the 20 or 30 years of good time, a period where people became more individualistic. I'm tired of this stuff. Let's explore different stuff. Let's explore drug, sex, and rock and roll and all this other things. And then you have, there's still these institutions with values, the church, the Boy Scouts, like actual government agencies that do what they're supposed to do. But over time, those erode as well. And what you ultimately get is a society where the order is low, but the demand for order is super high. And that's what we're at right now. When 94% of voters say that the two-tiered system of justice is important, that's demand for order. When only 30% trust the federal government, when over 60% thought that the DOJ was weaponized like in a banana republic, those are demands for order. And the problem is... By the way,
when I hear that, when I hear demand for order, that's when I hear strongman, okay? And I have to look at this through my Christian worldview lens, Bible prophecy, and I'm thinking, isn't that where a man steps on the stage promising order, peace, and order, right?
Yeah.
A strongman, what the Bible calls that Antichrist, or a one world leader. Or maybe even before that, maybe what we need is AI. We've been talking with Patrick Wood for some time that, there are those out there in the Peter Thiel world that are talking about, what we can do with AI. He's not the only one, others. And so we're saying, well, maybe the technocrats are going to convince us that, this whole right-left paradigm, or what Peter Thiel says, the choice is either Antichrist or Armageddon, and Peter Thiel's on video, we played it, saying maybe there's a third option. So maybe there's another system they can put in place, an AI. And basically, we don't need these elected officials. We don't need all of this. We let AI write the laws. We let AI be the judges. We let AI run everything. So there is, as they will say, we've taken the human equation of corruption and the fallen nature of man out. That's if they want to acknowledge the idea of a fallen nature of man. But I don't know which one's going to come first. Will it be, we're done with all of these people? We've tried all of it. We're done. Let's turn it to AI and pray that it's programmed in a way that's, like Lady Justice, she's blindfolded? Or is it, no, we want a strong leader? As you say, we want order. And then a strong man steps up on the world stage, what the Bible calls Antichrist. I don't know.
So what my understanding of past fourth turnings has been is usually that they're instigated by a crisis, one that society can't afford not to ignore. They have to come together and solve this problem, like getting rid of the Axis in World War II, right? It's something insurmountable that we have to strive really hard, right? And what it involves is a rapid change in opinion. Just remember back to 9/11 and how people changed their opinions very rapidly. George W. Bush, despite the fact that many people hated him, wound up with like an 80% job approval rating. And just imagine that in today's society. It's almost foreign, but we're told that in a fourth turning, that happens to an even bigger degree. And usually what happens is that a vacuum of leadership gets filled. So right now, what you have is the vestiges of old institutions that were put together predominantly by boomers and older generations that have now frayed and fallen apart. And what you have is a bunch of angry young people who are not going to inherit the same happy lifestyle of their parents, and a crumbling dollar financial economic system. Wealth inequality is increasing rapidly. Family formation is spiraling. These things are unsustainable. And so what happens is, out of necessity, people will form a new value set very rapidly. It'll change opinions. And so that creates new institutions or takes over the institutions that exist and reforms them. And so what is fascinating to me and what you're talking about is this idea that the fourth turning could essentially be outsourced to one person, that Donald Trump can somehow come in and wave a magic wand and fix all of the ills of the last 80 to 90 years of American society. And that's not possible. Donald Trump does a great job cleaning up Washington, D.C., arrests some of these people, it restores the public trust. That still leaves us with messed up academia, messed up churches, messed up corporate boardrooms. Who are the people that are going to fix that, and why should they? I don't know how we get there, but history tells us it's coming, and it'll probably be on the back of a crisis. I don't know if people are going to just rush to any one individual. I think Donald Trump feels like a last chance to me. I don't know, though. This is all just conjecture. I don't think people are going to trust AI, though, because I think just trust in things is low. And so a thing that comes as a panacea to the problems of society's ill, I don't know. But I'll tell you, the church doesn't necessarily... That's where Yeah, go ahead.
The church, no, finish that sentence.
I'm just saying, like, who's stepping up? Where is this wave of new values? I saw interesting 18 to 39-year-old numbers where they were most pro-Trump. Now it's the 30 to 39-year-olds, the 18 to 29-year-olds are sort of drifting back liberal again. I don't know. But what we should see is a shift towards the younger generation taking the reins of leadership. I think as a leader, J.D. Vance would be very symbolic of that happening, to see a powerful millennial come in and solve the problem in a very different way than Trump. Very different type of leadership he has, and that would be interesting, and that could be a catalyst. Or it just might take, I don't know, World War III with Russia could take some form of social unrest here. We're certainly in a spiral of accelerationism with the way that the Democrats... Well, we do know historically, Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, all these different people, that you generally have some kind of massive crisis that brings a strong man to power, right? And I'm wondering, again, is this setting the stage on a global scale, as you say, economic problems globally, World War III, global, all these things, pandemics they might release, global, terrorism, bioweapons, etc. And that's where, again, I go back to the Bible, and you have a strong man come onto the scene who, according to the Bible, is promising peace. That's what he's promising. It's a false peace, but he's promising peace. Now, the Bible also says there's a strong spiritual delusion, and people will believe the lie. All who've not delighted in righteousness, but have delighted in wickedness. And so there's a delusion. It's a spiritual delusion. Much like when people would go and hear Hitler speak, they went there opposing him, but wanted to hear what he had to say, and they left mesmerized by him. Some kind of spiritual thing was going on. I don't know if that's what's coming, but I guess I'm only left with either AI bringing the order people want, AI, artificial intelligence, where things are more ordered, biometrics,
chipping, all this kind of thing that can control things and turn some of this human stuff over to AI, which people are, maybe, hey, it couldn't do any worse than the clowns we got now. Or some strong spiritual leaders, religious leader, AI world leader, steps on the scene, mixing spirituality, who then incorporates AI, which that seems to be the mark of the beast. So I'm not looking for the Antichrist, but I am saying I think the stage is being set for all of this. Closing comment.
I mean, things are not great. Institutional trust is really low right now. The middle class is hollowed out, but there's a lot of green shoots. Trump is bringing over a lot of foreign investment. We just had a really high consumer economic confidence print. There's a lot of good news. The problem is that we have this bogey in 26, and it's going to be, I hesitate to overuse the word existential, but a lot of people that I've talked to who know things have conjectured that the Democrats, if they get control of the Senate, are going to get rid of the filibuster rule. They're probably going to impeach the heck out of Trump. They're going to do all these performative committees. They're going to literally, what they'll probably do is create an Epstein committee and rub Trump's nose in this if Trump doesn't get the problem fixed. And so no matter what we're talking about is a loss of political capital behind what I think was American voters' best shot at the next easiest way to resolve their issues. And so if those issues don't get resolved, then I don't know what that brings, but it could bring a lot of rapid change. It could bring a lot of strife, and maybe I'm wrong.
Wow. Please visit Mark Mitchell's website, Rasmussen Reports. If you want to follow him on X, there it is, @HonestPollster, @HonestPollster. Mark Mitchell, lead pollster of Rasmussen. Thank you, Mark. I did it again. Did it again.
Good to be here.
And Dolly's
thanks.
correcting me. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I know, Dolly. All right, we'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouse.bg.com. In-house. And welcome. Glad you're with us on this July 15, 2025. I need you to tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social. Everybody should hear what is about to be discussed with Carl Tykrebs. Providentially, again, we talk about providence, right? The Lord laid it on my heart on Sunday to call Carl. And so I called Carl. I said, Carl, I need to check in with you. What's going on? What you been up to? And Carl begins to tell me, I've just returned from a conference where there were 8,000 people attending, and it was a psychedelic conference on the new religion with psychedelics. That's the word we should have used, logo, was psychedelics, not psychotropics. Anyway, psychedelics. Psychedelics and a new religion. It was called Psychedelic Science 2025. Okay? And we actually have a lot of Substacks on this. carltykrebs.substack.com. And he's got a lot of pictures. Now, he went to this, and it was held in all places. Rocky Mountain High, Denver, Colorado. Some of you got that. Some of you got that, right? That's pretty quick, House. That's what they were doing there, discussing psychedelic science and a new religion. It was basically, he said, engaging the literature of Burning Man and other venues into one conference. And it was hosted by a group called Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They say, big deal, Brandon, bunch of potheads, whatever. No, sorry. That's what I thought too. Like, well, okay, so right, great. They can get 8,000 people to want to talk about what? altered states of consciousness with mushrooms or something. But it turns out he started telling me who was in attendance. Folks, apparently there were elected officials there, formally elected officials, nationally known individuals, even people on the so-called right. And apparently there were a lot of religious leaders there as well. And as he explained it to me, I realized this is not just some fringe 60s rehash of the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Remember that musical Hair? This is a gaining momentum, and they're now openly in public telling you we're going to create a new religion based on psychedelics. Now you say, why has this got you saying it's one of the most important stories you've heard in the last 12 months? Because of who was there, the people that were there, and because the Bible tells us, as we've been studying through Revelation chapter 17, concluded that Sunday night, now going into Revelation 18, Babylon, we see in Revelation 17 this woman, Babylon, and the text tells us several times, that city, it's Babylon. We're told that city you saw is Babylon in Revelation 18, I think verse 2. The woman, Babylon, is riding the beast, that's Antichrist and his 10 world assistants, and she has in her hand a golden cup, a golden chalice. And I remember reading to you about Donald Barnhouse saying that in the Babylonian era, it was not uncommon to put together some kind of concoction that people would drink as part of their initiation into occultic activity, to have an altered state of consciousness and be ready to receive the rites and rituals of this occultic practice. This mixture in the golden chalice. And the world is drunk. And the leaders of the world are drunk with this religious system. And as Carl was talking, I said, how interesting that right now I'm in Revelation chapter 17 studying about this religious system that we know is going to involve some kind of altered state of consciousness concoction, which really fits with pharmakia, pharmacy, witchcraft. And what's going on in Babylon? Chapter 18 says it is filled with demons. It is filled with every unclean spirit. It's demonic. And he says, Brandon, major people are at this event. This is not just some group of Burning Man weirdos in the desert. This is going mainstream, corporate, religious, political, economic. He joins us now. I hope by now you've gone out there and you've put into Twitter, tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, whatever you got. Because this is going to build some very serious puzzle pieces for us as we connect it all together. He joins me now, carlteichribb.substack.com. Carl, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us on these 74 Christian stations of VCY America, WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and Worldview Tube.
Hey, Brandon, it's good to have this conversation. It's really important. Thank you for having this.
Yeah, it's one of the most important topics I think we'll have discussed in the last 12 months for the reasons I've given. What do you make of my opening monologue? Do you agree when I say that this is a big deal, one of the biggest stories in the last 12 months, because it is setting the stage for this spirituality that's going to, I think, play a major role in fulfilling what we see coming from Revelation 17?
Yes. In fact, I would say you maybe even understated it. This is very important. And this is something that the Christian community, for the most part, has missed without realizing that the spiritual dynamic that we see in the Western world, this changeover that we already started to encounter in the 1960s, is completely connected into the concept of psychedelic spirituality, and that there has been a renaissance, and that's their language, a renaissance within the psychedelic community. There is a new movement towards social acceptance, political acceptance, acceptance in the realm of therapeutics, and for us, I think the most important angle is understanding that there is a push towards the religious side of psychedelics. In fact, Brandon, that was one of the things when you and I had that conversation a couple of days ago. I made it very clear that as so much of the discussion was on the clinical, therapeutic neurochemistry side. At the same time, they never divorced the spirituality. They never divorced or never shied away from talking about how they encounter entities, spiritual entities, different types of sentient beings when they're on their trips, and how what we're seeing is this merger between science and mysticism. That was their language, their way of opening these conversations. This is the mystical and the scientific coming together.
I want to stop you right there. You're saying, which is what we've been teaching here now, my first book in 1990 on the New Age movement, Cosmic Humanism, New Age, Altered States of Consciousness, meeting spirit or master guides that they think are individuals more highly evolved in the process of reincarnation that we know are demons. And that was my book in 1995. The New Age is not so new. You're telling me that they were openly stating that these psychedelics were for altered states of consciousness that would help them meet entities that would help to guide them. That's what you just said.
Yeah, no question. They were very open about that. Even suggesting, in one of the talks I sat through, they were suggesting if we could do a slow drip of DMT, because DMT gives a bit of a too fast of a reaction in terms of the psychedelic experience, if they could do a slow drip DMT injection with the possibility of prolonging the psychedelic experience, that they would be able to have a far deeper relational contact with the entities on the other side. They're not hiding this, Brandon, and they never have hid this. What's fascinating about the New Age movement, and I'm glad you brought up your earlier book on the subject, what's fascinating about it is the New Age movement, in many respects, spins out of the 1960s with those exact same experiences at a spiritual, psychedelic level. We're just seeing a repeat of this, except now it's far more professional, far more funded, far more influential.
Now, for those who think that this is not a big deal, okay, I want you to tell our audience who, well, you know, here we go. I'm going to go right to the website because I can tell you there. I want you to look at this right here. This is not us making anything up. You can go to ps2525.live. Logan, I want you to go to this website where this Rick Perry is speaking, and I want you to download this in case it goes missing. ps2025.live. Thank you for being part of the Psychedelic Science 2025, the integration. We're gratefully joined. You joined us for the June 16th to 20th online gathering. Over the next few days, we'll begin rolling out the first wave of media, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, who is speaking at this? The governor of, I think, Governor Pollster of Denver, of Colorado. Logan, look that up. He's a homosexual, isn't he?
In fact, Brandon, I was at his talk. And while he was giving his keynote address, Governor Pollster was pardoning everybody in the Colorado penal system who had been arrested for possession of psychedelics, specifically psilocybin mushrooms. So at that event, he laid out his public pardon for those who had been arrested for possession.
And then you've got Governor Rick Perry speaks on the healing power of psychedelics for veterans. All right. Now, when he told me that, I wasn't shocked because I've been warning you guys for how many years about Rick Perry. I don't think Rick Perry's elevator, in my opinion, goes all the way to the top. And you don't have to hear Rick Perry talk very long to realize this guy is no rocket scientist, in my opinion. But I said to Carl Tykrebs, this is the same Rick Perry that the American Family Association in 2011 and American Family Radio Network, their leaders didn't want to listen to me. Now remember, I was working with them for about 15 years. And I said, I'm sorry, this relationship is going to end if you continue to push forward being a part of this prayer rally in Texas. I think they rented Reliance Stadium. If you continue to push this prayer rally with false teachers like Cindy Jacobs, who thinks she's a prophetess, reversing hysterectomies over the television, and I have the videos, If you're going to work with the New Apostolic Reformation people for a prayer rally, thinking you're going to get God to bless you, you're not. And Rick Perry was a part of it. And I tried warning the American Family Association. And Tim Wildman, if I remember correctly, I think it's in my book, The Coming Religious Reich, wanted to tell us, and I quoted him, how Cindy Jacobs has this very evangelical doctrinal statement. You know what? Who cares what someone's doctrinal statement is on paper? What do they live? What do they teach? And so there's Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, and I don't know if he was the governor in 2011, or I think he may have been, and he was trying to run for president. And he ended up being the Secretary of Energy. So this guy has gone from being in Reliant Stadium, trying to call people to prayer, to now speaking at a psychedelics conference and the power of healing power of psychedelics, and at a conference with another guy, Paul Stamets, speaks on how mushrooms can save the world. And a lot of other crazy stuff that was going on. You know, I think the American Family Association, in my opinion, American Family Radio, these people need to publicly repent, which they've not done since 2011, for ever doing what I told them and others did in 2011 and provided all the documentation that they were involved in a spiritual enterprise that was not right. I mean, these people think they can save the family, save the country. Apparently, they can't even save themselves. We'll be right back.
Nature has a rhythm, a quiet strength, a way of restoring, protecting, and renewing us. Wellness isn't just about how you feel today. It's the quiet choices you make for tomorrow. At myvitamin.com/worldview, we've made daily self-care simple. Quality vitamins, daily supplements, and targeted nutrition. myvitamin.com/worldview makes it easy. Pure ingredients thoughtfully combined, tailored for your body. Formulated by a doctor who has over 25 years of medical practice experience and is a certified functional medicine provider. Visit myvitamin.com/worldview today and take the next step towards strength, balance, and resilience. Discover the wide range of med packs made for you and your loved ones. What you nurture today becomes the strength you walk in tomorrow.
All right, here I went and looked it up here in the break. CBS News, Perry turned to God for answers to nation's woes, August 6, 2011. Texas Governor Rick Perry, he was governor then, asked Christians to turn to God for answers to the nation's troubles as he held court Saturday over a national prayer rally attended by thousands of evangelical conservatives. Of course, he's wanting to try to run for president. Yeah, don't the Christians always get played? We always get played, don't we? Well, I didn't get played this time, and a lot of you didn't either. And it was at Reliant Stadium. And here it is. Scroll on down. The event was Perry's idea, but was financed by the American Family Association, a Tupelo, Mississippi-based group that opposes abortion and gay rights and believes the First Amendment freedom of religion applies only to Christians. Well, I don't think they believe that. I don't think, I'm going to be fair and balanced. They don't believe that. They believe in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, okay? We don't have to make stuff up like the left does. But they did sponsor it. And I warned them over and over, and I said, we're going to break ties over this after 15 years. And we did. I'm not for sale. I'm not going down that road with false prophets, false apostles. That led me to write the book, The Coming Religious Trojan Horse in 2011, and then The Coming Religious Reich. And here's Rick Perry, turned to God for answers to the nation's woes. And then we go right to the website of this event, Psychedelic Science 2025, dude. And as Governor Rick Perry speaks on the healing power of psychedelics for veterans. Who else was there? Because I want the audience to understand the reason this is one of the biggest stories of the last 12 months is because of the fact that you have the governor there of Colorado, the former governor, former energy secretary, Rick Perry, others there. There were major people there from national and international groups and religious groups. Tell our audience how seriously this was being taken by major power players. Carl?
Well, first of all, it's important to know who was there. And you're right. So we have the governor of Colorado. We have former governor of Texas, Rick Perry. You had the attorney general of Colorado. You had Congressman Jack Bergman from Michigan. You had Sharif, I'm going to probably butcher the last name, Ellen Hall, who was Undersecretary for Health, former Undersecretary for Health. Tim Ryan, former U.S. Congressman. You had a senator from Arizona, former senator from Arizona. Okay, so this is, again, one of the things that I told you, Brandon, and this is kind of, I think, kind of very telling. When I came back from this event, I had people go, oh, yeah, it must have been just like full of druggies and potheads. And I'm like, hold on.
Exactly.
These are congressmen. These are governors. These are attorneys, loads and loads of attorneys, including members of the Psychedelic Bar Association, because this is a big enough industry that it has its own legal counsel, its own legal influences. We had representatives from the American Psychiatric Association, former members of the UN World Health Organization. You've got people from UC Berkeley. You've got people coming from Johns Hopkins. In fact, Johns Hopkins has just released a major report on the Christian, Muslim, Jewish, religious, psychedelic experience. In fact, Brandon, this is one of the reasons I had to be there, because this is going to be talked about, how they did this longevity study demonstrating that, see, it doesn't really, and I'm just paraphrasing here, giving you the Coles notes, it doesn't really matter what you believe, it's what you've experienced. You've all had this similar psychedelic experience. Therefore, we now have a justification from a religious point of view of your mystical encounters. And this gives us now the kind of a direction for a new sense of interfaithism, a new sense of interspirituality. During one of the Q&As, somebody asked the question, are we moving towards a world religion? Well, from their point of view, yes, because we all now share the same mystical encounter. Okay, I've been going to, as you know, Burning Man for a number of years. I'm returning to Burning Man. These are the conversations you are hearing at Burning Man by the way, some of the very same people, because it's that same sense of kind of global leadership that attends events like Burning Man. And over the years, I've gone to various psychedelic workshops at Burning Man, primarily because I knew that this is a major narrative. And the narrative is built around the angle of therapeutics, PTSD, trauma. So Rick Doblin from MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Research, which is, Psychedelic Studies, is, by the way, like literally a form of the United Nations for the psychedelic community. Rick Doblin is a rock star in this field. And Rick Doblin, during the Psychedelic Science Conference, talked about how we need to have net zero trauma by 2070. And so we need to have clinicians trained in psychedelic therapy. We need to have special hospitals and clinics dedicated to help people deal with trauma through the use of psychedelic substances. In fact, just I think 2 weeks before the Psychedelic Science event, Texas earmarked $50 million for ibogaine studies for therapeutic use. So from Burning Man to the Psychedelic Science event, and by the way, again, same people, or the same kinds of people, you had this repeated theme, this repeated narrative. We are doing this because we have a global mental health crisis. And study after study show that there is some potential benefit. And so there's protocols being set up. There's standardization processes that are now in play. There's a legal framework that's being developed. Nevertheless, they never, ever divorce the spiritual side because they can't. It is absolutely intertwined. And that was recognized throughout the event. And so I heard it at least once that the therapeutic side acts as, in a sense, as a Trojan horse to allow us to now integrate psychedelic spirituality into the conversation. So as you have clinicians trained on the use of psychedelics for therapy, they were lauding the fact that we're also going to have clinicians working with chaplains, and we are working towards chaplaincy programs where the chaplains themselves who have gone through maybe a psychedelic experience can now work with the clinicians, help people with end of life, help people with trauma, etc., etc. So it is a marrying. It is a wedding of the flesh and the spirit in this science and mystical
here's one of their
alchemical union.
Here's one of their headlines right here. I don't know how you say this. The workshop on June 17th. How do you say this? Psilocybin? Psilocybin.
Oh,
anyway.
Psilocybin.
What is that?
Psilocybin is the compound in magic mushrooms.
Okay, magic mushrooms. Okay, the workshop, using those mushrooms and what's in that as a tool in personal and spiritual development. It goes back at least 9,000 years, is now reemerging in Western culture with promise in areas of medicine, education, and religion, in hopes we have sufficiently evolved to constructively integrate this powerful sacramental substance into society as wise, safe, and responsible ways. This workshop focuses on the fundamental knowledge required. Among other topics, we'll consider prerequisites for safe use, the potent variables of mental set and physical setting, the vast varieties of inner worlds awaiting. Whoa! The vast varieties of inner worlds awaiting exploration, and the challenges of integrating new insights and perspectives into everyday living. And this was what, again, Rick Perry was speaking at. Again, I want to know, I want to see the American Family Association, American Family Radio Network in the next 24 hours come out and condemn this, and condemn Rick Perry for speaking at something like this. When in 2011, he wanted to call us all to God, and now he's speaking at a psychedelics conference? Come on. Good luck saving the family and the country if we can't. Well, I'll tell you what, 2 Corinthians 6:14-17, the Lord says, do not mix. What fellowship does righteousness have with unrighteousness? Light with darkness, the things of God with the things of Baal, Satan, right? Nothing. They don't. You don't mix the holy with the profane, right? That doesn't mean we're all perfect. Brandon House isn't perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But we don't deliberately mix the things of God with the things of Satan. We don't do that, right? We don't endeavor to do that. We don't seek to do that. Okay? Do we all feed a clay? Yep. Do we need to practice Romans 6? What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Right. No one's saying we're perfect. Okay? But what we're saying is we don't go around as people that are sanctified, are justified, immediately saved through faith in Christ, and then seeking sanctification, ongoing faithfulness and obedience. We're not perfect. We're continuing on the sanctification process, right? Growing, washing of the water in the Word, the Holy Spirit in the Word as we study the Bible, right? We're looking for glorification. Then we won't have that sin nature anymore to have to fight, right? Well, even though we're not perfect and we struggle with sin and in the flesh, right? The battle of the new mind and the flesh, we know better than to deliberately mix the things of Satan with the things of God, like, quote, Christian yoga or Ouija boards and occultic practices, and try to somehow bring them into Christianity, right? We don't do that. So, now that we understand, no one's saying that we're perfect, we've arrived, no. But we do know enough to not mix the things of Satan with the things of God. And you know what it says in 2 Corinthians 6:14-17? If you don't do these things, okay, I will bless you. You know what the original wording is in the original language? It says I will welcome you. It means I will bless you. I will welcome you. I will bless you. What's the opposite of a blessing, folks? It's a curse. Now, if we want to see God help restore our families and our culture and our country and our nation, then we need to do what God's pattern is, which is you don't mix the profane with the holy. And you don't mix false teaching and false teachers and that what is a demonic spirit. And you don't mix Christianity or so-called Christians calling you to God in 2011, now speaking at a psychedelic conference where they're calling for using these for spiritual development and exploring the inner worlds that are awaiting. So I want to know if the American Family Association, American Family Radio is going to call out in a press release, as they're so quick to do when it comes to other groups, Walmart, Toyota, whoever it is they may have called over the years. Are they going to call out Rick Perry now? Well, look at that. They're openly admitting, and that's just one workshop, Carl. One workshop. Entering to the vast varieties of inner worlds awaiting exploration. How do you define those inner worlds awaiting exploration? How do you define that, Carl?
Oh, well, they are definitely entering into a spiritual realm, and they don't hide that. They understand that completely, that this is a spiritual dimension. I'm just going to throw up a couple of books onto the screen. These are books I picked up. I've got a fairly extensive library on the psychedelic movement because, well, I have to as a Christian researcher on global trends. LSD, Spirituality, and the Creative Process. These are just books I picked up there, just so you know that this is their own language, okay? This is their own framework. DMT Dialogues, Encounters with the Spirit Molecule. I have the part 2 to this, which is on entity encounters. Ethnogens and the Future of Religion. Ethnogens is just their fancy way of saying sacred psychedelics. Psychedelic Mystery Traditions. Spirit plants, magical practices, ecstatic states. This is accepted literature within their own community because they talk about it like this. They don't hide this at all. You know, for us in the Christian fold, we have, for the most part, ignored this movement, and I get it because there's caricatures around it, there's stereotypes around it, but we have ignored it to our peril. And in so doing, we all of a sudden are now finding ourselves face to face with this on podcasts, and culture, children.
Hold right there.
Yeah.
Hold right there. Because it's coming. You're right. It's coming. Here's another one. Cannabis and spiritual sacraments. Oh boy. We'll be right back with Carl Tykrib. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Here, Carl Tykrib is with us, and providentially, I called him on Sunday. I mean, Carl and I should talk a lot more than we do, but the Lord laid it on my heart to call him on Sunday, and I did. I said, "What have you been up to, Carl?" We chit-chatted for a minute, and all of a sudden he said, "Oh, I just got back from Denver." I'm like, "What are you doing there?" Went to a conference of 8,000 people on psychedelics. I thought, okay, that's weird, but okay, whatever. Okay. But then he said, "Who was there?" I'm like, "You're kidding me." Rick Perry, all these so-called religious leaders, and then you've got elected officials, the governor of Colorado, all these other people. Oh, wow. This is not like just your crazy people from the 60s. And the more he told me, I realized this is laying the foundation for what I just taught with Revelation chapter 17. Here we have another, and his Substack, by the way, if you want to go read up on this, he has it all at his Substack, which is carltykrib.substack.com. Carl Tykrib. Tykrib is T-E-I-C-H-R-I-B. Okay? Look at this, Carl. Churches and the new psychedelic emergence. Churches and the new psychedelic emergence. Ancestral medicines and the growing movement. You know, I said to you, Carl, this reminds me of Timothy Leary. Tune in, turn on, drop out. He was having a conversation that I quote in so many of my books and presentations over the years, flashbacks with Aldous Huxley, and he talked about the drugs will open up people to many realities, pluralism, many roads to God. And he said the one thing we'd run up against was Christians and the Bible. It's an obstacle that we've been running into, the Christians and the Bible. And yet you told me that basically Timothy Leary's protege, a global rock star in this movement, if you will, was there speaking. Is that true? Did I understand you correctly? And what's his name?
Oh yes, no, it's Rick Doblin. Rick Doblin was basically handed the baton by Timothy Leary, Terrence McKenna, and others, but Timothy Leary specifically. In fact, Doblin made that point very clear. I've been to a number of workshops by Doblin at Burning Man, and I've watched him interact with the people. He's really, in terms of just his personality, his public persona, he really is a very kind of a down-to-earth kind of fellow, and yet at the same time, he is absolutely convinced that psychedelics are the answer to the world's problems. And so Rick Doblin is the head of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and he is, you could call him the Secretary General of the psychedelic movement. In fact, Psychedelic Science 2025 was hosted by MAPS. This was a MAPS event. And I don't know what the dollar figure was for this event, but it had to be running into the millions. It was massive. This is the convention center downtown Denver. This is 8,000 people. Now, this is smaller than the Psychedelic Science event they had in 2023. 2023, they had over 12,000 participants. And of course, in 2023, there was an excitement because MAPS had successfully been lobbying the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and they were looking forward to a favorable response to the use of MDMA as a therapeutic. And then the U.S. Food and Drug Administration said, to their surprise, no, we're not doing this. You haven't gone far enough in terms of your studies. You haven't gone far enough in terms of proving the efficiency or the effectiveness of this. And so it was acknowledged in Denver this June that, hey, we kind of flopped on that one. But nevertheless, there was a lot of anticipation, a lot of hope that they were going to move forward with this. And of course, they had just come back. Rick Doblin had just come back, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks before that from a conference with European Union leaders, and including representative from NATO on how to integrate psychedelics into the EU and bring about psychedelic therapy for NATO troops, possibly.
Whoa! NATO is getting involved in psychedelics. How about the United Nations? They're in it as well, right?
Well, the United Nations. So I was at a workshop on trying to restructure the United Nations international framework that they have on banned substances. It goes back to 1971 and how difficult it's going to be to rework the wording. But they did recognize that, look, if we can do it nation by nation by nation, eventually at some point we're going to see a change at the United Nations level to reschedule the drugs. Because the idea or the concept of scheduling narcotics, scheduling those substances, goes back to the United Nations, back to their work in the early 1970s. And so they're looking to try to unravel that somehow, because it's written within our code, it's written within our domestic and our international legal structures, so to speak. So this is the level of conversation, Brandon. This is, again, I have to really hit this hard. This is not a fly-by-night fringe topic. Listen, when Joe Rogan talks about it, when you see it being discussed within Silicon Valley as your leading tech companies are talking about microdosing and the importance of psychedelics for their creative processes, this is then, okay, heads up. There's changes in the works.
Here's another headline: psychedelic cults and outlaw churches. Psychedelic cults and outlaw churches, LSD, cannabis, and spiritual sacraments. Okay, and then there's another one. I read that a while ago. Here's another one: churches and the new psychedelic emergence. Churches and the new psychedelic emergence. Ancestral medicines and the growing movement.
Yeah, I was at that
Tell
workshop.
Me about it.
Okay, so that workshop had an attorney working with Native American churches. There's a number of churches, emerging churches, and some that have been established, trying to get approval at the federal level so that they can use their sacraments, whether it's psilocybin or peyote or mescaline or potentially DMT or other substances, to be able to have a spiritual experience. And so you had an attorney helping churches along that road. We had a Native American leader talking about how they use the framework of nonprofit church organizations so that they can now introduce their sacraments And then we also had a spiritual leader from the Brazilian, from Brazil, talking about how they use DMT in their services. So that was one of the ones I attended. I'll give you a couple other ones I attended that fit in the same framework. And by the way, I've got 30 pages of notes. I couldn't cover everything, not even remotely close. I would have needed a team of 40, 50 people there to cover everything. One of the other workshops I attended was New Research on Muslim, Jewish, and Christian Psychedelic America. Another one, New Initiatives in Muslim, Jewish, and Christian Psychedelic Communities.
Whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. They're going to get the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims together around psychedelics?
Yeah, it's already happening. At least at the research angle. In fact, that workshop had Jew, Christian, Muslims talking about the research that they've been doing and how that there is a hesitancy, especially in the Islamic community, to use psychedelics, but that there is a burgeoning psychedelic community that's already starting to take shape. First of all, with Western Muslims, but potentially having maybe a spillover effect beyond that. And it was also recognized that in the Jewish community, proportionally more Jews, secular Jews, use psychedelics than probably any other ethnic group in America. That was also talked about. So that was quite interesting. So this is, again...
You know what this reminds me again? I'm going to go back to Revelation. Revelation 17, verse 1. John sees the harlot sitting on many waters. The harlot sitting on many waters. Okay? That's the false dominant global church. Many waters. The text tells you, a few verses over, the waters, that's the people, tongues, nations of the world. Okay? The text describes what the waters in 17:1 means just a few verses later. That woman that you saw that sits on many waters, the waters being the people, the tongues, the nations, right? And then the scene changed, and I was carried away, John says, in the spirit into the wilderness, where I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, the woman being Babylon. The text tells us in 17 and 18, chapter 18 of Revelation. So there's two scenes. One is a harlot sitting on many waters. That's the false church. The other, as the scene changes and he's taken and sees the woman, not the harlot, but the woman sitting on the scarlet beast, is Babylon in the world Antichrist system and his 10 world assistants, who eventually, around verse 15, 16 of Revelation 17, destroy the one world religious system, and Antichrist sets himself up as the new world religion to be worshipped. But to get there, you have to have a one world church. Right? And Antichrist is going to use spiritualism and spiritual talk. And he supposedly brings peace. Peace. We know from the opening of the seal. But it's a false peace, because of the next seal you got war. Isn't this interesting? A false dominant global church, which is why I wrote the book, Religious Trojan Horse, in 2011, becoming Religious Reich in 2016. You now see drugs are going to be involved. But the foundation, Carl, has already been laid with contemplative prayer. How many of our so-called mainstream evangelical churches have done contemplative prayer, right? They have talked about Richard Foster, who wrote his book, and they've changed it, but you can go back to the original, laying in the grass and his body ascends out of his soul, right? Richard Foster. It's all in my books, documented, footnoted, directly quoted word for word, Richard Foster. Contemplative prayer. Lectio Divina, whatever you want to call it, right? And when we tried calling this out, 2008, 2009, whatever year it was we started, so much blowback from so-called evangelical Christians. And then we started saying, wait a minute, Christian yoga. There's nothing Christian about yoga. It means yoga union with a Hindu god, making the natural world dissolve, go into the spiritual world. You don't want to do that. And then, of course, we know transcendental meditation by the Maharishi, brought to America in the 60s. Transcendental meditation, a new name for an old practice, yoga. Yoga means yoga or union with a Hindu god. Again, if you want to do stretching, then stretch, but don't call it yoga. But if you're doing yoga, even the poses in yoga are designed by leading yogis to bring your chakras into line and to make the natural world dissolve and enter the spiritual world. But those in the 60s, some of them didn't want to do drugs and have an altered state of consciousness. So the Maharishi brings over transcendental meditation for an altered state of consciousness. And I have documented again and again from leading New Agers and occultists, the most popular way to meet a spirit or master guide is through drugs or hypnosis or altered states of consciousness. That's a demon. Demons. Now we know that during the tribulation period, demons are being released. They're all over the planet. God is allowing the abyss to be open, and these demons are coming out as part of the tribulation. But we also know Babylon is a dwelling place for demons. It seems as though the world during the tribulation, Carl, has gotten very friendly with demons, even though some of them turn on them and start stinging them with these stingers, and as John the Revelator describes. But you see now that there is coming now a global push from even governors, the former governor of Texas, the current governor of Colorado, former Secretary of Energy, all these people for what will open the world to a demonic spirituality, and then comes Antichrist. You can just see it coming together to build that false church of Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. I mean, this is why it was so stunning, our conversation. I want you to comment on that when we come back, Carl. And now I'm starting to get... okay, there we go. I thought I've got a text from a medical doctor. I thought he was going to chime in on this. You do want to go to carltycrib.substack.com. carltycrib.substack.com. He's got several great articles up there. Where There Is Smoke, Encounters in the Psychedelic Ecosystem, Psychedelic Spirituality, and more. I'm not going to take calls today, folks. I could. I'm sure the phone lines would melt down, right? Maybe we need to get Carl back tomorrow for phone calls if he's available. We'll check during the break. Don't go away.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
You are watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
All right, I don't want to get too graphic here, folks, because I always like to keep it so moms can keep the radio on with their kids. But there was one called Let's Talk About Sex and Psychedelics. Lessons from kink, BDSM, and healing. I have no idea what those initials stand for. I had to go look it up. Apparently it has something to do with bondage and sadomasochism and other things. Okay, can someone please tell me again why Rick Perry was reportedly speaking at this event, according to the website? And we have a video of him on the website. Can someone tell me again why this is going on? Well, yeah, but hey, we're gonna call everybody in 2011 to a stadium to ask God for help. Well, yeah, I kind of warned you that was not going to go past the stadium because that was a spiritual enterprise with a lot of false teachers, right? Remember that? That was my theological observation, opinion, and theological analysis. And I warned you about Rick Perry, that I wasn't so sure about this guy. Carl, I don't know what your schedule's like. We don't have time to open the phone lines today. Is there any chance, I know I put you on the spot, any chance you could be back tomorrow and take phone calls?
Probably not tomorrow, unfortunately. This week is already pretty booked right up. So my apology for that, Brian, but potentially maybe next week, sometime soon, because this is a really important conversation, really important.
It really is. And Carl, when I went to the website a while ago, I found out who some of the sponsors were, if I can get back to there. I mean, just looking at their sponsorship page, let's see, here we go. If people can go there, it's called psychedelicscience.org, psychedelicscience.org. and you scroll down the page and you start seeing who some of the there we go, executive sponsors, all right, supporting sponsors. Beckley Clinical, Seven Hope Alliance, Compass, that was a big one, it looked like. Journey Clinical, Vicente, I don't know who these groups are. There's associate producers, but you got a lot of them that are like Farm Alaya Biotech. You got a lot of groups that are into psychedelics, obviously. Here is one, Proactive Pharmaceutical Investigation. You had media partners, Psychedelics Today. I'm just giving a few. They had a ton of sponsors and a ton of exhibitors.
Over 180 exhibitors.
Law firms.
Huge exhibition hall. Huge.
Psychedelic Pharmacists Association. So before the break, I talked about the pushback we got in the early 2000s, talking about the emergent church, Christian yoga, so-called, contemplative prayer. And we said, look, folks, this is what they're doing. The other way you can do it is through drugs, or you can do it through these things. Now we see the drugs, the psychedelics, whatever, coming in. And Carl, I can tell you right now, mainstream so-called evangelical churches will start to embrace this. True or false? I mean, they've already had the platform laid for them when they accept transcendental meditation and Christian yoga and all of this thing. Don't you think that particularly those of us that are my age and older are going to be going, I cannot believe these churches of this denomination, of this branch are doing this. But they will be doing this, won't they? They're going to go into this.
No, I firmly believe that's going to happen. And there's a couple of reasons why. So number one, back in 2023, I was at the World Parliament of Religions, and we had a special workshop on psychedelics with Richard Rohr and members of the Johns Hopkins study on religious attitudes. And there we were given the institutional justification for taking the Christian community down the road of psychedelics, specifically through potentially seminary programs and chaplaincy programs. And then after that, I went to Burning Man 2 weeks later, and I sat at a progressive Christian camp where they did a special workshop on Jesus and psychedelics. And there I heard it from, I believe there was a Baptist minister, we had some Methodists, Episcopalians, and other non-denominationals talking about how now psychedelics allows them to feel agape love, feel Jesus, have a new vision or a new lens by which they can now interpret Scripture. And so on the one hand, at the Parliament of World Religions, I heard it institutionalized, and then at Burning Man, I heard it being justified at an individual level. Now, I've been studying this a long time before I started talking about it. In fact, in my book, Game of Gods, I have quite a bit written about psychedelics and how it has been a major engine to drive cultural change. I also teach at a small Christian college in Southwest Saskatchewan. And it's interesting, before COVID, I would bring up in my lectures the role of psychedelics in the cultural shift that the West has experienced. And for the most part, again, this is a conservative Christian college. For the most part, it wouldn't really cause any excitement. There wouldn't be any kind of real reaction. The last couple of years, however, I've had students come alongside afterwards, go, hey, Mr. Teichen, can we talk? I'm getting pressured by members of my youth group, or I had people in my family, I've had people in my church family who are trying to get me to do psychedelics because this is the thing. This is where we're going. So there is already at least some impact within Christendom, and I would suggest that there's a lot more coming down the road. A couple of the other workshops I went to that fit along these lines, one of them was entitled One and Many, DMT, the Multiverse, and Mystical Convergences in Christianity, Taoism, and Hinduism. And then the big one, the one from Johns Hopkins, that's really important for people to grasp. And by the way, on one of my Substack pages, I do have a link to a gentleman who was a whistleblower on the Johns Hopkins study, because this is going to be a study used to justify a convergence of the Christian, Jewish, Islamic, and other religions around a common mystical experience. And that was the workshop I attended, was effects of psilocybin on religious and spiritual attitudes. And that was huge. That's a huge study. Again, this is a study that I think the Christian leadership community needs to understand will be used as a tool to justify pushing psychedelics within the Christian world. One of the recommendations, because the problem of Christianity, the problem of evangelical fundamental Christians came up in one of the workshops I attended, and they were saying, hey, how are we going to be able to overcome this problem? One of the suggestions was, well, maybe what we can do is have like special retreats where
right there. We gotta go. Yep. We gotta go. Stay tuned for Crosstalk. Stay tuned for Crosstalk. Thank you, Carl.
This has been Worldview Radio.
All right. We're back with WROS and Worldview Tube. Pick it up right there, Carl. We got another 6 minutes here with you on Worldview Tube and WRS. So they said we got to try to deal with the evangelicals, and we could maybe hold what they say, workshops or camps.
Yeah, special retreats. Maybe we could even do, not Bible studies, book studies. Have the men and the women go to different retreat settings, or in a seminary setting, have accredited classes on experiential spirituality, using psychedelics as the tool used in the classroom setting. So that was the suggestion that they were using, recognizing that a frontal attack against the church would probably not get them anywhere. But bring the lay people on board. Have the lay people invested within it. That will change the direction of the church.
Let me ask you this. How will psychology and the bringing of psychology, secular psychology, into the church in America the last 30, 40 years, how will that lay the foundation for the acceptance for psychedelics? Or do you see any connection?
Oh, yeah. Well, we had the head of the American Psychiatric Association at this event. And we had a lot of people involved in the psychiatric community. It's absolutely understood that the psychiatric world will, because you're looking at human potential, you're looking at self-development within the psychiatric world. Well, that's what psychedelics is offering. That's what psychedelics is promising. This is a tool to be used for mental healing. And so the psychiatric community is very interested in the role of psychedelics. And then, of course, that's going to have some inroad within the church itself, because the church community is full of folks rushing off to secular psychiatric clinicians, going to, looking for counsel, psychiatric help from outside of the church body. So at some point, there's going to be an intersection. There has to be. And I think that's well understood by those involved in the psychedelic community, that this is a way of bringing the lay people on board.
Now, isn't it interesting? Are they mostly talking about? I guess I did see one headline about LSD, but are they mostly talking about mushrooms, or are they also getting into anything dealing with marijuana, LSD, or is it just mainly focusing on mushrooms?
No, there's a gamut. There's a wide range. Mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin definitely is front and center in many respects. But they had workshops and sessions on LSD, lots of talk about LSD, lots and lots of talk on DMT, because DMT is the spirit molecule. It's the compound that allows you to have a direct experience with spiritual entities in a far more, consistent manner compared to, let's say, using other substances. There's some talk of ketamine as well, ibogaine, and there's a whole host of other substances. All of this is in discussion. It's not one particular psychedelic, though psilocybin mushrooms definitely is right now taking kind of center stage. One point in all of this.
Okay, so mushrooms took center stage. Mushrooms took center stage, but there are others. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I guess what I'm
Brian.
getting
Sorry.
at, Carl, is how will this get into the mainstream of so-called Christianity or evangelicalism? And I can see it being more easily accepted by the idea of mushrooms, right? That this is just a plant and God created it and blah, 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 blah. And that's going to be the inroad, right?
Right. Well, I think the inroad's going to be through therapy and psychiatric help, mental health. And that's how they framed it. Okay, keep that in mind. That's how they understand it. We use mental health, therapy, PTSD, that we see this as having a benefit towards that end, but also fully knowing, fully understanding the spiritual ramifications, fully embracing both. And so this is the point, I think, Brandon, for the church that we're going to have to wrestle with, because all of a sudden we're going to have friends, neighbors, family members going, well, I have been helped with these psychedelics, with psilocybin or with ketamine or whatever. I've now had some type of mental health healing. And see, it's safe. See, it's effective. But then at the same time, bringing in, literally through the Trojan horse of therapeutics, a new psychedelic spirituality, and not hiding that spirituality. They don't hide it whatsoever. It's completely embraced.
And isn't that what we see in Genesis 3? Satan in the form of a serpent, you will know right from wrong. You will know good from evil. Take of the fruit, right? And you'll know. You'll have hidden knowledge through an altered state of consciousness, if you will. Now you're empowered with hidden knowledge. You'll be like God. And now nothing's really changed. Now it's have an altered state of consciousness. Gain a new level of insight, understanding, power, Gnosticism, hidden truth that's available for you. Mysticism. Wow. Nothing is really new. carlteichribb.substack.com. Carl Teichribb, that's Teichribb, carlteichribb.substack.com. Carl, great job. Folks, thank you for watching. And remember, we need your support to keep programs like this going. worldviewfoundation.com. Take care.
Hello, I'm Brandon House, and I want to tell you about Numi. This is a swish. You just take 2 capfuls, swish it around your mouth for 3 to 4 minutes, and you're absorbing, according to the studies, glutathione. Now, you don't need to take my word for it. There are over 162,000 studies on PubMed on the power of glutathione. It is a powerful molecule that studies show detoxes our cells. Some studies even show that, well, glutathione might remove mercury from our brains, help to prevent things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Now, look, I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you what the research is showing about the powerful molecule glutathione. Numi is the product that contains glutathione. Melissa and I swish with this twice a day. We urge you to go to Numi.com/house1. That's Numi, NEUMI.com/HOWSE and the numeral 1. Begin finding out about the power of glutathione while also supporting this broadcast network. Thank you.
All right, folks, before we go tonight, we got a communication from someone the other day that said that they don't miss a show, that they get a lot of their spiritual and Bible teaching from our network. They have a hard time finding good Bible teaching in their area. We get so many emails where we're a lifeline to people. Don't show my screen, Logan, but I want to read you one from a lady from Idaho. Thank you and your expert guests again for being courageous warriors for truth. The content of your programming is vital to our witness in these perilous times. As with Aaron and her holding up Moses' arms, I'm praying for you, your family, and your ministry. I'm weary and increasingly isolated as I watch and warn people, including those within the church, even among the Watchman community, not the kooks, but the sound doctrinal stable people, she says, who don't want me to tune into your programming because it's too negative. And they refuse to speak of the inconvenient truth, which would actually be very powerful in bringing people to Christ. What inconvenient truth, she says? The research and facts brought by Karen Kingston, Nick Helsher. She names Carl Teichribb, Annie Cyrus, Leo Holman, Patrick Wood, all your guests. I literally have no one with whom I can discuss these things, to link arms, join in the fight to wake people up. So I keep doing my best flying solo here in my neck of the woods. I know others are out there somewhere, but I feel like Elijah right now. So many people are driving into the ditch. This is what I'm seeing. Biblically illiterate, zero discernment, hireling fluff sermonettes, no churches, very few teaching prophecy, lazy non-thinkers. She goes on to describe more. People that are more committed to political figures. She's tired of the deer in the headlights, the glazed-eyed zombies. She said, thanks for letting me blow off some steam. Keep bringing us the truth. God bless you. We get so many emails like this. We got one the other day from a lady, Logan. Remember that one? She was in a Culver. How do you spell Culver? That's a Culver restaurant, right? Yeah. I could have shared that one. That was hilarious. Don't show my computer. I'll just read it. She says, hello, Brandon. I want to share a Culver moment with you, about you. I was waiting at my table for my order when I noticed a couple coming in. The wife was wearing light-colored jeans and a jacket similar to mine. It was Brandon hour, so I had my cell phone propped up on the table. I got up to get napkins and noticed a man watching your show on my phone. I don't mind, so I just stood by him listening to the show. Shortly, he said, without looking up, where did you find this show? This guy is great. You didn't tell me you'd found a program like this. At that point, he looked up and said, you're not my wife. I replied, no, but I don't mind you watching. Your wife, though, is sitting down there at another table, seemingly wondering why you are visiting with me. We both laughed, and he thanked me regarding your program. Another viewer, Brandon, Joan of Arc. I think she's from Arkansas. I think that's why she calls her Joan of Arc, which I think is hilarious. It's cute. I said, wow, that's amazing. I asked her if you told him about World YouTube. She says, emailed back, what? 3 question marks. Did I tell him about World YouTube? I'm your biggest fan. Of course I told him. But you can't tax my brain that much as to program content. But you can't tax my brain that much as to program content. Incident was a few months back. Not to worry, he's hooked. I keep your cards in my pocket, my car, and my purse. Love your shows, dialogues, especially the night this last week with J.J. Carroll when you showed the picture of your granddaughter sitting in the lap of that person of questionable identity. She didn't recognize me, did she? Yeah. She said, rest well, we need you. I get so many great emails like that, folks. And so many people, this is their lifeline. And I have to tell you, I have no plans of retiring. I really don't. But there are days, as D.L. Moody said, I grow weary. I don't grow weary of the work. I grow weary in the work. And there are days I think, wow, wouldn't it be nice like some guys to just, not work so hard. But I have to tell you, I think about like Joan and the last ladies who email I just read. I think about these people. God has put us here at this time for this purpose, and we can't slough off the responsibility that he's entrusted us with. So yeah, there are days I grow weary in the work, but I don't ever grow weary of the work. I particularly love my studying of the Bible and preparing for Sunday nights. One of my family members asked me the other night, is there anything that you really, you've done a lot in your life, and you're 56 now, which is relatively young, obviously, compared to a lot of other folks. But at this point in your life, is there anything you really, really enjoy? And I said, I like what I do. I get tired at times. But I said, I really enjoy studying the Bible and preparing for Sunday night and then teaching that, because I love to learn, and I'm learning so much as I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. I really do enjoy that. But I have to tell you, honestly, there are days I think, it'd be nice just to take the day off, particularly in the summer months, Be nice to take the day off. But we just tried not to do that very often. But one reason why we keep going is because of people like you that email us. And when we realize the role we're playing in your life, when we realize that people are benefiting, we are encouraging people, we are edifying them and equipping them and encouraging them, that really makes a big difference. To agree on a hot Mid-South summer day, to put on a suit and come to the studio and get to the desk.